bottom line was I was late getting into the office by about 15 minutes. And he basically got into my face, "Oh yeah, good boy from Toronto," into my face. He said, "If you're ever going to be late again, you call me." I said, "Well, you know, I was..."
Before cell phones, how would you do that?
Yeah, you know, find a south, wherever it was. There was no phone. And I just got angry about this whole thing. I was in shock. Nobody had treated me like this before. Nobody. And I turned around and left. I just ignored him, turned around and left. And then I followed that up. I discussed it with a colleague, and I followed it up, and I called the senior VP in Toronto, and I relayed the information to him, and evidently that wasn't the first complaint he got, but it was the icing.
Wow.
He was gone at the end of the week.
So what started as a disrespectful treatment of you, you actually had more respect at the end, the way it turned out.
Yeah.
To some degree, at least they tried. They dealt with the character.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do in this workshop is get into discussions about how do we get enough courage up to find systems and processes to deal with the characters, because there's a lot of places they don't deal with it. Yeah. Thank you, Duncan. Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Lang. I'm a reflexologist, and years ago I worked for a home support agency, which was a cottage run industry based out of the home of the owner operator, and she was an absolute tyrant. I was the only one that was not on salary, so I had to keep track of all my little hours, and you know, I was the field supervisor, so I do liaison work between the clientele, which was mostly ministry, single moms, drug addicted, that type of thing, and you know, between the client and the social worker. And so my issue with my boss was I was the only one that had to submit this little piece of paper with all my little hours on it, and I was a young mom with 2 kids at the time, and sometimes 5 days, 10 days after payday, I still didn't get my check, you know, so I'd have to always grovel for it or ask for it, and her response was usually, you know, "You think I have nothing better to do but sit and write out your check," you know, and I'd be like, well, I've got nothing better to do but put in the hours for your company, so it would be nice. I didn't have the guts to say that. So the way she would compensate that is she'd give me my check late, but my next check 10 days early, just, you know, to kind of keep the balance from me going to labor relations. After 8.5 years of that kind of abuse, her entire staff walked off the job.
Wow.
And she tried to sue us for, you know, reneging on our fiduciary duties. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But anyways, that lawsuit got dropped. But I mean, we were at the mercy of her.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a very difficult situation.
Your story reminds me of what we studied in psychology, that if people are consistently a tyrant or consistently nice, we can usually cope. But if they flip back and forth, that's crazy making.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not just between worker 1 and worker 2, bully and victim, or they call them target. They don't actually call them victim anymore, they're targets, because that makes it more clear. The supervisor, their job is to keep a safe workplace from bullying. What do you think would happen when the government gets involved? WorkSafe gets called in where there's a lack of respect. What do you think WorkSafe BC can do? Do you have a sense of what? Educate. Ideally, they educate proactively.
It's a very powerful organization.
Very powerful. They can come up with
penalties
fines.
And fines, yes.
Right? They can actually shut workplaces down if it gets too bad. They can shut down the whole business, in addition to legal fines. And then the whole point of WorkSafe BC, it was designed so you couldn't sue your employer if there was an accident at work. But now, I'm hearing about legislation directly against frontline supervisors because they didn't protect their team at that site. How many of you have supervisors who know enough about the DSM-5 for diagnostic to know what's a disorder and what's behavior that shouldn't be? I have to tell you a funny story. My first year teaching psychology, intro to psychology at a college in Ontario, a lot of people wanted to become police officers and security guards. And so I was teaching them just a little bit about the DSM-5 so they could understand. And 4 of them in the group actually had, personally, mental disorders, we found out, and went to get help and withdrew from the program because it wasn't going to be wise to give them guns looking after security. What are the causes of incivility in the workplace? And the lack of self-restraint seems to be more epidemic than it used to be. When I was brought up, we were taught restraint by the belt. We would do what we were told because we had bullies for parents, right? It was pretty clear if you mouthed off, you were going to get whacked, right? So you learn self-restraint, maybe. So exactly, yeah. So they're talking about the need for emotional intelligence. And how does one become emotionally intelligent? One needs to become self-aware that this is an issue. And how do you help someone become more self-aware when they're behaving oddly or aggressively? How do you have that conversation? One of my favorite books is how to have difficult conversations. There's a lady that's a specialist that works on this issue, how to discuss what matters most. It's generally more for personal interest, but it's also how to deal with it in the workplace. And it's like having a mediator when you have to, so A is fighting with B, so you need C to mediate, to set it up so that they play fair and fight fairly kind of thing. But emotionally aware people don't need the mediator. They can tune into their wise self and bring that wise character to the table as opposed to the petulant child, right? Anyway, it's a book you might want to get from the library about, and the other book is obviously Emotional Intelligence. If you haven't read Daniel Goleman's book, highly recommend it as a starter kit to looking at beginning this kind of thing.